Hi everybody, in today's video we're going to kick off a new mini-series about adding more abilities to our player, and we're going to start by simply adding this little UI to our inventory that shows the 4 abilities that we're going to build, including the boomerang, which we already have. Hi, my name is Michael. Welcome to my 2D action and adventure RPG tutorial series. Follow along and learn how to create your own AARPG in Godot 4 using GD script. So we're going to be extending some of our player abilities in this next upcoming series of videos. And I need to point out, if you're new to the series, if you haven't been following along, I've created a new playlist, which is linked in the description, that encompasses all of the primary videos throughout my series that focus on the player and his abilities. Now, that being said, this is going to be episode 72, I guess, in the series. So there may be little bits and pieces that aren't covered in the playlist that relate to the character, like maybe some of his equipment and things like that. But you can find those playlists separately, or you can go back from the beginning and just watch everything. Now, of course, there will be some assets that I will provide on my itch.io page, which will be linked in the description. And you're going to be looking for the Abilities.zip file to download for this. And another little note, because I have created that little zip file at the beginning of my process of working on this, and it's going to be several videos. If you're following along as I release these videos, you may need to download that Abilities.zip file from time to time as we go through. But if you're following this at a later date, you may have everything you need. And certainly for this first one, you will definitely have what you need. So I'm going to go ahead and just open that file, and then we're going to bring that stuff in. And the place I want to put at least the assets that we're bringing in today is going to be underneath player sprites, because these sprites are going to be used obviously in UI, but they're going to be used in a couple different places. And so I think it's easiest to associate them with the player. So that's why I'll do that here. So I'm going to just open that folder in File Manager. And next I'm going to open my zip file. And in here, we're going to begin with these ability icons. If you are starting out, you'll also see the bomb. You may see other ones as well, but we just need the ability icons for this video. So I'm going to copy that, paste it into my player sprites, and we'll go back to Godot, and we're ready to begin working. So let's go ahead and open this, the inventory UI, and I'll kind of show you where we're going to work. So let's see, this is going to be underneath GUI, and then where is it? Pause menu. In here. So in here, we've got this, where am I? Inventory is a sub item. Pause menu scene. That's what I want. Okay. So this is the screen. This is the UI that we're going to update, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some adjustments to these, and we're going to add a new panel where we can add these abilities. And so I think actually the first thing that we can do, just to kind of start to free up some space, is I'm going to, let's see. Yeah, we do want to expand just the inventory section, this inventory tab, and I'm going to grab these containers and I'm going to move them over. And I'm actually going to take this inventory one and move it over quite a bit. Okay. And then I'm going to make a copy of this panel container, because what I want to copy the styles. I also want the same appearance of button. It's not going to function quite the same. So we're going to kind of deconstruct it a little bit, but I'm just going to start by duplicating that. So Control D and put this one up top. I don't like that I didn't name most of these. I'm going to go ahead and call this one like ability container. Okay, just like that. When I drag this ability container over, let's go ahead and just take it way off the screen for a moment. We can see how it's laid out, and we've got the, the rows and the columns because we're using this grid container. And we can keep a grid container, but I'm only going to have 4 abilities in my game. So, if you're going to have more, you can adjust it. And if you're going to have more, you probably need a different solution than this because there's not a lot of space. So maybe another tab. But I'm just going to go ahead and let's see. After the first 4, I'm just going to delete the rest of these inventory slot items. In fact, I'm going to delete all of them except one. I'm going to take this one and I'm going to right click it. And I'm going to say make local, which means it's no longer an instance of that scene. Because if you recall, back when we built this is an inventory slot scene that has kind of pre-built functionality. Okay. And I don't really want all of that. I do want the appearance though, so it keeps that. And I'm going to go ahead also and come down here and just remove this script by clicking that little reset button. So it no longer has a script associated with it. And now that I've done that, what I can do is I'll just duplicate this a couple times, 3 times maybe. So we've got 4 of them. And there we've got our 4 inventory slots. but I want them to stack instead of go across. So I'm going to adjust my grid container. You know, it's got 5 columns, so obviously we want 1. And once we've done that, we should be able to resize this. And I'm just dragging it all the way to the smallest it'll let me go. And voila, just drag this back into place. And I've determined that I think about 10 pixels, which if you hold shift and then press an arrow key to move it, when you've got this move tool selected, that'll move it by 10 pixels. That's a pretty good spacing. Then what we can do is I'm going to come down here and grab this container that has our inventory in it. And I'm going to move it 10 pixels. And then we can also grab these other 2 containers, the stats and the equipment. And if I drag it to this edge and move it 10 pixels, we're getting pretty close. There's a little bit of inconsistency in there. So, you know, you can do what you will with that. Maybe we want to adjust this over a little bit more, or maybe just nudge it over 2, nudge this over, whoops, nudge it over a couple, and then maybe I can nudge this, this ability container over 1 or 2. I don't know. I'm not being ultra precise, but I think this looks pretty good. Like I'm not seeing any glaring issues. So if we go ahead and just run the scene, oops, I just ran the pause menu. That's going to cause a problem. So if we go ahead and run the scene, I'll run this level here. And no, looks like we've got a little error from something that we've done. So let's go to our pause menu. And let's look at what I did. Did I delete something, or do I still have a script attached, or what? Oh, I've got this grid container's got a script on it. So when we copied that, we actually need to get rid of that script as well. This script is specific to our inventory, so should have remembered that, but here we go. Clear that off. Okay, now if I run scene 2 one more time, it should work. Okay, game's working. Now if I hit escape, I've got this section where we're going to put our abilities. Okay, so far so good. It's just a basic little UI. One thing that we want to do is, you know, we have item descriptions that appear when we have an inventory. Let's pick up a couple things, right? You can see when I hover over an item, we get an item description. So with our abilities, as we replace them, we're going to update the icons. We're going to remove the numbers from some of these because some of our abilities don't require an icon or a count, a quantity, but some will. But we'll also add the ability to have a description when we hover over them. Okay, so the abilities I have, there are 4 of them. We've got a boomerang, which we already have in the game. We've got a grappling hook, and we'll have a bow and arrow and a bomb. And I'm going to list them in that order in this UI. Now, the order is going to be pretty specific in one of my scripts, and so I think I just want to kind of maintain that order. But it's a little bit up to you how you do this, right? So I'm going to go ahead and expand this, and each of these buttons has a texture rectangle and a label inside of it. I don't need a label on this first one because this is for the boomerang. So I'm going to delete that label. And then I'm going to select this texture, and I'm going to go ahead and clear this, and I'm going to add a new Atlas texture. And then we just need to go down to our player. Did I already collapse that? Here we go. Player, sprites, and I'm going to drag these ability. Oops, I need to expand that first to open this Atlas texture up. And then there's a spot for the Atlas right there. So I'm going to drag my abilities icon on. And then what I can do is I'm going to go ahead and just edit the region with this little UI. Make sure you've got pixel snap on. And then the first one is the boomerang. So I'm going to drag this down to a box. Now this isn't quite perfect. This should be at 32 pixels, but that kind of helps, I guess. You could just have, I could have typed it in from the beginning. Everything's 32. Width, height, the X coordinate. So there we go. We've got our boomerang. If we go ahead, we can go ahead and copy this. I'm going to say, let's see, where's copy? Copy. And I'm going to come down here to my next one. This second slot will be for the grappling hook, which also has no quantity. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to come in here and paste. Now, if I were to go in here and adjust this rectangle and say the X is at 0. Oh, that worked pretty good. Except that's the bomb. What do we need? Grappling hook. So unfortunately, I didn't do the icons in the same order that I planned to put them in the screen. There we go, 96 pixels over. So you can see that this grappling hook is the 4th one. This section over here we're going to use in the next video. We're going to use that for the player HUD, okay? But there we go, we've got our grapple hook. In this section, I'm going to grab this texture rectangle. I'm going to keep the label. And I'm going to, let's see, I want to do the same thing here, I guess. We'll just paste this in. And then this is going to be our bow and arrow, I guess. So let's see. Looking at this, if we edit the region, the bow and arrow is this third one. Unfortunately, you can't like click and drag. I really actually don't like how this UI works. I mean, I like it generally, but it's not perfect. So this should be 64 pixels. The width should be 32 pixels. There we go. That's our bow and arrow. I'm going to go ahead and take this label and I'm going to make it left aligned. Okay, so it's up here. And then I'm going to do this same with this last inventory slot. We'll make the label left aligned, and then I'll set the texture. And let's see, this is our bomb. So this is the one that starts my texture out. So there we go. Okay, so we've got our textures assigned. And now when we run the game, obviously we're going to be able to see them, but let's just run it, make sure I didn't break it. And there we go. We've got our boomerang, grappling hook, bow and arrow, and bombs. Now let's add a simple script to these because we want them to be able to update the description when we hover. And so let's go ahead. And in order to do that, when we create this new script, I want to do this in my UI folder. So I'm going to go down here to inventory, and there's a scripts folder, and I'll just create a new script. And we'll call this a gear item button, maybe, I don't know. Now, contrary to how I normally do things, I'm not going to bother giving this a class name because it's going to be pretty basic. We do want it to extend button, however, because that's the kind of nodes we're going to be sticking them on. And we will export a value. We're going to use the export multi-line because we want to be able to write, lots of text and see it more easily. So we'll make a multi-line variable called description. And it's a string with capital S. Okay, there we go. Now we're only going to have two basic pieces of functionality. We're going to have a function that updates whenever we get focus of the button. And then of course we need to connect to that in our ready function. So we'll just start with the ready function and we'll say focus entered, because this is one of the signals that's built into our button. And then we'll just connect. And of course we need to have a function. So we'll call it on focus entered. Did I spell that right? And then down here, we will make that function. Okay, now the onFocus entered signal doesn't emit any values, so just a simple function is fine. And what we're going to do is we're going to call our pause menu. Now, this is technically a child of the pause menu, but because our pause menu is a global auto load script, we can access it this way. So this actually makes it easier, in my opinion. Otherwise, we'd have to store reference to it, etc. But we'll say update item description because we have a function in there for that. And we'll just pass in that description like so. And that's it. That's all this script needs to do. Now we just need to apply it to each of these buttons and assign a value to each of those descriptions, and we're good to go. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's see, ability container, right? When we look at the first one, this is our boomerang. Oh, we don't have a script. I wonder if I can drag and drop it onto all of them. Nope, one at a time. I feel like there needs to be a way to do that, but I don't know. Down here, no. Okay, here we go. So now if we look at our first item, we've got a description field now as part of this button. And so this is our boomerang, like I was saying. So I'm just going to go ahead and I've got some text here. I'm going to just copy and paste it in. I'm going to do the same for my grappling hook. Ooh, this thing looks really grapply. I don't know if you guys have seen Elf. I think of Elf. Ooh, sucky. We need a description here for our bow and arrow. And last but not least, a description for our bombs. Okay. So now if we save this and let's run the game and just kind of check it out real quick. Okay, there we go. We've got descriptions here on our boomerang, grappling hook, bow and arrow, and bomb. Now, if you wanted to, you could add, information about how to use it in here. I don't know. You can choose how you want to do that. But simple description added. Thanks to having a fairly decent inventory system, if I say so myself. I mean, I built it, so I'm biased, but seems to be working pretty good so far, so I'm happy. Now, I'd also like to update the labels of these two buttons. This is where it gets a little bit less obvious how we need to achieve this. And it also brings into our project a little issue because we haven't yet coded or provided a place to store the value of how many arrows or how many bombs we have. So we're going to kind of skip forward, in our thinking of the project and think, where do we want to put this stuff? When I was practicing this, I went back and forth through a lot of different places. I was like, oh, this needs to be in the abilities script. And then I was like, no, it should be in the player manager because that's always accessible. And then finally, I settled on just putting it in the player script. So I'm going to just open my player script here. And the reason I like it on the player script is because when it was on the abilities, it wasn't globally accessible enough, if that makes sense, for other scripts to grab it, like our inventory. And when I put it on the player manager, I felt like it was kind of too far separated from the abilities. And I don't know, honestly, they all would work. So it just kind of came down to what I felt best about. And I hope I don't change my mind later, but the player script seems like a good in-between because the player manager has access to the player script, so any other script can find it if they need to. But on top of that, the abilities already kind of keeps a reference to the player, so it's easy to check the values there. So seems like a good spot. So I'm going to say just two simple variables. We want an arrow count variable. And I guess actually one other thing that I didn't mention in my thought process with this, let's just say we got 2 arrows, is I was thinking, when we save and load data, a lot of the stuff that we save and load about the player ends up getting updated in here, like the level, the experience. So that's another reason why I thought putting it in here is good. Now we're not going to hook up these values to our save and load system right now, but we'll get there in a future video. Okay, so now that we've got these values, we'll save that, and then we can start updating the labels in our inventory. So I'm going to come over here to my pause menu, and I'm going to open up this pause menu script because it's the one that's, handles it all. Now, I'm going to take a simple route for this, and I think it's sufficient. I don't think we're ever going to need to do anything different for this game. But we do have a concept of showing and hiding the inventory. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find the show pause menu function. And in here, I'm not going to do anything fancy. I'm not going to grab a specific reference to any of these things. I'm just going to take each of these labels. I'm going to drag and drop them in here. And, oh, you know what? I don't like that. So before we do that, let's change this. Let's call this one, those were just too long, right? So this is going to be our arrow count label. And then this one will be our bomb count label. And then I'm going to just select them and I'm going to access as unique name. Okay. Now when we go back to our script, this is going to look a lot nicer. Boink. We don't want them on one line though. They're each going to be separate. So we're going to grab each label and we're going to set the text. So we'll say .text equals, and then we grab the text from our player so we can access that via the player manager .player, and then just get the arrow count in this case. Okay. And we'll go ahead and just, I guess, copy all the way up to here, copy and paste that down here. And then this just needs to be bomb count. Now this is not going to work. And if you know why, let's go ahead and run it just so you can see that it won't work. I think it's good for debugging purposes. So yeah, let me run the game. And then when I pull up my menu, we're going to get an error. It cannot assign the property of key text with the value of type integer on the base object of type label. So, right, this label is saying, hey, you're trying to assign an integer and I need a string or text. Text needs to be a string. So what we can just do here is go str and then wrap this in parentheses, and that'll convert it to a string. So I'll just copy, paste that. Oops, got my cursor in the wrong spot. Now, because we ran an error, we got to run the game again. We can't just go back to it, but here we go. We'll run it. Boom. So there we go. We've got 2 arrows and 10 bombs. Okay. In the future videos, we will make it so that these values update as we pick up or use item, the arrows or the bombs, things along those lines. And in the next video, we're going to be adding some little UI items to the HUD here and make it so that the user can kind of select them. Okay, so we're going to start building out this ability system. And so if this is helping you, if you're learning from it, then please give this video a thumbs up. And if you're new to this channel and you're not yet subscribed, then I hope that you would consider doing so. I greatly appreciate the support, and subscriptions mean a lot. They help my channel grow. And last little tidbit, you know, if you want to join my Patreon to support me, I give away a few things. It's mostly for people to show their support, but I greatly appreciate it. And as always, we'll see you next time.